You've tuned into the Bellingham podcast for the week of July 25th, 2021. This is episode 195. From that less scorching city by the Salish Sea, I am AJ Barce.
And straight out of 9226, I am Chris Powell on this episode. Hey, guess what? It's part 5 for episode 195 of AJ's and my mini-series about welcoming everyone back to Bellingham. You know what? The first 4 episodes, we covered a whole lot in Bellingham. Where to go, things to do, places to eat, places to drink, places to, take a date, places to take the family, places to take a little one or an older one. Now we're going to get the heck out of Bellingham for a while, because guess what, boys and girls? Whatcom County is pretty darn huge. We're going to talk about some of the places outside of Bellingham next on the Bellingham podcast.
Wow, Chris, it's been a week or so, but man, that was a wandering episode lead-in. How you doing?
Not all who wander in their intro are lost. I'm doing just dandy. How about yourself?
Doing good. I'm glad that we don't have to have the sun tanning oil or a parasol to survive this recording.
No, it's nice to be in shade. And by the way, where are we based on my emphatic recommendation?
So we are not, ladies and gentlemen, at the Northridge Trail. Hello to everyone who over the years has waved hi or stopped by to ask what we were recording. But we get quite a bit of notoriety, and it prevents me from editing the show in a timely manner. So we are actually at a high school nearby.
A nearby high school
near the the Northridge Trail.
It's a 3-syllable high school, and without birds that are chirping their ears our ears off.
Or that dumb crow that came down and just yacked at us that last recording. Yeah. Anyway, I digress from our wonderful wildlife.
We've got some updates from that past episode to talk about. AJ from the Bellingham Podcast Newsroom. Go for it.
So, okay. Thank you to everyone who's listened to the show. And we've gotten a lot of great responses and some great kudos from this now 5-part episode. However, there are some corrections, addendums, clarifications, and so I'm going to issue them. So here's from the Office of Housekeeping from the Bellingham Podcast, from our listener and also good friend, Sarah Hutton over at Village Books. She wrote in, and because we had talked about Evolve
as a great place to go downtown to go get some chocolate espresso and other post-dinner treats.
So they are in multiple locations, but because the heat dome fried our brains and we had to re-record that episode, we were struggling with that. But Sarah, thank you so much. She wrote in saying, "Hey, AJ and Chris, love listening to the Back to Bham theme series. I've got a list of new places to try. Exclam. Quick note of clarification. Evolve is still with us, being at Village Books, on the mezzanine level, as well as their space at Hotel Leo. 2 opportunities of deliciousness. Exclam. Hopefully we'll see you soon in the stacks, being you and me."
That's right, the stacks of books.
So I did a pop-in on Sarah.
Oh, really?
Yes, and dropped off some Bellingham podcast swag. So she's got a couple of our stickers. So
we have swag?
We do. More on that later, Chris.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks for clarifying, Sarah, by the way, because we're thinking with all of what happened in this past year, we were concerned that Evolve, that fine place upstairs to get some chocolate and espresso and other things, might have not been able to be with Village Books. Thank you for letting us know that now there are 2 locations to serve your chocolate sweet
deliciousness.
That's right.
Next is from listener and friend Brenna. She gave me the TLDR, the Too Long Didn't Read, on Amendment 21.
I wonder if they have a Too Long Didn't Listen for a podcast. I think that's with the show notes.
Drink. So at Amendment 21, so Brenna is her and I have talked about different aspects of Bellingham, and younger than both of us, so she's got kind of the vibe of the local university-esque scene, but her tastes are very
evolved.
So
elegant.
She gave me the rundown on Amendment 21. One, they have excellent food.
And the Amendment 21, for those who didn't listen, is in the lobby of
Hotel Leo.
Hotel Leo hobby, that's right.
Yep. So the thing that she dialed me in on is, if you are a purveyor of fine gin, that is the place that you want to go. They have like an experience around each of their gins for their drinks. They will give you the rundown of how far it is away from Amendment 21 that they sourced their gin for each of their drinks there, and they're all, of course, themed as well. Anyway, I just wanted to give a big shout out to Brenna, because like she gave me the TLDR on this, and I cannot take credit for it because she knows that place in spades.
As we're talking about gin, those fine musicians of Lord, Gene Simmons, and Paul Stanley, it is cold gin time again. You know it'll always win. It's cold gin time again. And that's the only thing that'll keep us together. Thanks for the clarification, Brenna. Apartment 21. Amendment 21. Boy, I need some gin to be able to make it through this show. That would be a really good place that I may have to check out when life gives me a situation where I need a drink. And also, as far as recent happenings for your two knucklehead hosts here at the Bellingham podcast, AJ, I do my own solo project, which is, a different kind of thing, but the Bham podcast will still remain. AJ's a guest again. You can hear his alto, tenor. I'm going to call you tenor.
Okay.
Send
me a tenor.
The tenor with the tenor was a guest again on the Zulu Time podcast with our friend over in the UK, Dan. Episode 47 for those of you playing at home. Subscribe to that friggin' podcast, would you? Zulu Time podcast. It's worth it. Would y'all talk about in this post Independence Day?
So it was post Independence Day for us here in the United States, and so Dan brought me on. He's at timely_moments on Instagram, and so he brought me on because we wanted to talk about American watchmaking and kind of not just the history, because again, we've mentioned on the show, he typically goes into the history of watches, mostly in the military theme, but he wanted to kind of take a different angle from it of kind of past, present, and kind of what the vibe of American watchmaking is. So we hit on a lot of the different brands. We put together a list, including your Shinola. He talked about you on the show,
yes.
To Watch Minimalist.
Oh, yeah.
And we just put together a list of American watchmakers. And I kind of brought the flavor of where American watchmaking is in this kind of resurgence, renaissance, whatever you want to call it. And it's really the ethos of America. When you look at automotive, we have people who got cars back in the day, and then they started tweaking and making them better. And that's
Hot
how
rods.
We got American muscle, hot rods. And that's really where I kind of see our independence, no pun intended for Independence Day, our independent brands, boutique brands.
The ingenuity and the innovation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what we talked about on the show. So
Very cool.
it out. Check it out. Episode 47. You got this knucklehead on that show.
And that solo podcast that should anyone be of interest, if you got kiddos at home that are doing the online school, there's a decent shot that they may be uploading assignments or having discussions online or checking in on their Canvas class. Canvas is the name of a learning management system, and I do a solo podcast called the Canvas Insider. After 195 episodes, I'll give myself a little self-publicity. It's mainly scripted, which is not what we do here. We have some...
But it's concise.
Oh, yeah, it's concise. There's no show intro music.
I know, I missed the rock music, bro.
Yeah, that was jarring because I wanted to announce myself in a way that was unlike most ed tech podcasts. I can't stand all of that upbeat music. And so I went with heavy rock, and I realized after 35 episodes, I don't like music for, the intro bumpers and things. And so I'm just monologue, man. You get my baritone bellowing at you. And I talk about technology outside of the ed tech realm and professional development.
Yeah.
That's another way that you can enjoy us in the Bellingham podcast. But getting back to this darn show,
yes,
we've got a scenario that we've been running for the previous 4. We're going to continue that. Here's a scenario. You're in town on business, attending a conference, or are visiting family and friends. You've heard lots of good things about the city by the Salish Sea, but you want to see what Whatcom County has to offer because you got pretty good gas mileage with the cost of gas nowadays. Now what? And I will say this, AJ, you did a whole lot of work in coming up with ideas and suggestions, recommendations for people to get out of town while you're in town. It was nice to revisit just how big Whatcom County is. It's not just the I-5 splitting, the town.
Now leaving Skagit, now entering Whatcom County. It's not necessarily that.
The actual acreage, the boundaries of Whatcom County in Washington State, at least from an eyeball of the United States map. And if you want to be able to argue with me about this, if you got some need to argue like everyone does nowadays, go ahead and find me. I'm more than happy to get your comments to this. But I'm going to equate the size of Whatcom County similar to the state of Massachusetts. Hey, Boston. where they all pack the cars. We have a huge landmass in Whatcom County. A lot of it is populated, but otherwise it's in the Cascade Mountains. AJ has done a great deal of info gathering of events coming up. And, let's start off with the northernmost city before the Canadian border, U.S.-Canadian border, in Whatcom County, and that is Blaine.
Yeah. So in episodes past, when we go a Whatcom wandering, if you've a long time listening to the show, we would typically say like, hey, there's some offerings in Canada. Unfortunately, at the time of this recording, still, us Americans cannot cross the border for non-essential traffic. So
coming soon.
So the farthest that you can go is where Whatcom County ends, and that is Blaine. Now, Blaine is typically the border town, but that's kind of a misnomer. There's several border towns in Whatcom County. You got Blaine, you got Sumas, you've got
Linden.
Yep. Those are all three border towns. But we're gonna hit on Blaine because it's kind of it's got the Peace Arch, which is the well-known monument between our nation and Canada. And it's basically the last stop as you leave Whatcom County to go up into said Canada. Now, Blaine isn't just about the Peace Arch. You've got the little town, and it's little.
It's a smallish border town.
Yeah.
They do back when the border was open. They had a whole lot of international commerce based on tariffs and other types of economical reasons that a whole lot of Canadian traffic would cross the border to come over to Blaine. A funny thing that I always kind of chuckle at, as just recently, a Major League Baseball team has decided to change their name to the Guardians as opposed to a Native American.
Oh, okay.
So the Cleveland Indians, I believe, are now the Cleveland Guardians.
Oh, rad.
The Blaine Borderites is the mascot of the school district.
Oh, really?
Yes, indeed.
Fun fact.
And what a great name for an intimidating mascot. I'm a Borderite. That being
Why
said,
not be the Border Patrol or something like?
the patrollers? I don't know. Well, what kind of cheerleading songs did you go Patrollers, go? No.
Okay.
Let's talk about stuff to do in Blaine.
So in Blaine, you have the kind of the historic seaside part of it. There's restaurants and there's a cool antique place there. I mentioned that on a previous episode. But the thing that I want to bring up is for the families out there. In August, there is typically COVID pending. There is what's called Pirate Days, DAZE. And there's a link in the show notes.
And for the love of all border towns everywhere, drink.
In August, it's really fun. Like they have this really cool park. If you've got kids, it's basically a pirate themed park where there's a ship and you have your kids, kiddos play and stuff and whatnot. The cool thing is that usually Pirate Days aligns with Lady Washington. See previous episode about the history of that tall ship.
It's not a pirate ship, though.
It looks like a pirate ship.
It looks like a pirate ship, but it's not a pirate ship.
It's not a pirate ship. So anyway, Lady Washington is going to make a port call in Blaine, August 19th through the 22nd. And that's
mid-August.
Yep, that's where you can pay a small modicum of fee and tour this very old vessel that is deeply tied to Washington State history. But also you can charter it obviously, but you can also take sails. They have like what they call an adventure sail. It's like a 2 or 3 hour tour, a 3 hour tour.
Exactly.
Where you go out and you can experience this old sailing vessel. This is the pinnacle of Navy, where you had sails, you had to, bring up the masts and all this other jargon that I'm not going to claim that I'm a Navy guy, and it's a really cool experience. You can also do a sunset for those that are, picture aficionados, or maybe you have a date, you can do an evening, sunset golden hour sail. So take a look at that because it's a really cool thing.
For the Lady Washington going from the 19th to the 22nd, that takes kind of overlaps with another border town's big event. The Linden Northwest Washington Fair is going on. They're opening it back up. They got live music. It's a wonderful county-wide, regional-wide event, August 12th through 21 for the Linden Northwest Washington Fair. That 19th through the 22. If you're in town around that time in August, wow, you can hit multiple things in one time. A lot of stuff going on in this county in the month of August.
Yeah, and on top of that, like here in Bellingham as well, the Lady Washington will make port here August 12th through the 16th. So like you just said, you could hit Lady Washington either sailing out of Bellingham or Blaine, or do, like you just said, it's basically the 12th to the 22nd is going to be a big batch of stuff.
Absolutely.
So that's why I wanted to hit in Blaine.
Nearby Blaine, there is, if you take a look, and what insiders, longtime residents have learned is pretty much you could park somewhere in the main promenade, and we don't need to give you directions for it. Go to Blaine, take exit, 275, 276, something like that.
Thereabouts.
The Blaine main city center. You will definitely see the Main Street promenade, and you park anywhere and you can totally walk around. And oh, by the way, you've got the bay right there in front of your eyes, and on a nice weather day, what a great way to take a jaunt, go on some playgrounds for the kids or yourself if you feel like it. But also nearby Blaine, you might notice this big water tower in the distance. And that water tower is kind of a indicative little monument to the Semiahmoo Resort. And the Semiahmoo Resort is one of those beautiful places that you go to, but AJ did some digging and he found out the origin on the Semiahmoo Resort.
Chris, that water tower reminds me of a different kind of tower. Does it do broadcast airwaves as well?
I don't think so. It just broadcasts liquid. But there's another radio tower in Bellingham that it contains a very special radio station.
Is that KMRE 102.3 FM?
It's that community power station we've heard so much about. They actually broadcast our show Saturdays at 3, in case you haven't heard after these 195 broadcast episodes. Now, we thank KMRE for continuing to play our show Saturday at 3 p.m. and all over the darn internet at kmre.org.
Yep. So at Semiahmoo, I wanted to give a little bit of background on just even the term Semiahmoos. So a lot of the times here in the Pacific Northwest, you'll see a lot of our region take names or give tribute to names of our local ancestral people, our First Nations people, our indigenous people here in the Northwest. And here, especially in Whatcom County, even the name Whatcom is indigenous in nature. So with Semiahmoo, I wanted to dive into this, Chris. So the origin, as I got from the internet, and I've got to give a tip of the hat and an apology to one of my teachers up at the Lummi Nation, Smakya. It's been a while since I've had to do Lummi Chasen, so forgive me if I sound a little bit rusty. But as I found online, quote, the Semiahmoo were more closely related to the Lummi and the Samish peoples south of the international border here in the United States, and to the Lakwamen and the Tsuke people across the Strait of Georgia. Then they are to the Halkolamen, speaking Stolo, of the Fraser River, and the Fraser Delta north of themselves, the Musqueam. Again, I apologize on my Lummi Chasen, I'm a little bit rusty, but I wanted to give a little bit of background too, just the names that we have, like for instance, Semiahmoo.
We want to do it as much dignity and respect as we can,
yeah.
Which is why AJ's doing it and not me, because I'm pronouncing like a fanatical dork. but good on you.
But I wanted to bring up like Semiahmoo, the term, at least like I said, that I could find. The origin is actually is reference to the Semiahmoo people of this region. So that's kind of paying homage to, again, our indigenous neighbors that, preceded us long before we came here. So beyond that, Semiahmoo now, that point is a resort.
Oh, with a whole lot of beautiful homes and condos and other types of residences around. However, in the month of August, there is some beautiful, you're getting a dead-on view of the bay. You're right there. And there's some live music that they've had in the past. Now that we're all defrosting and getting out and about, some live music where you can quote, and this is from their website because I do my research, you can enjoy beachside performances by local artists with a stunning, their words not mine, ocean backdrop. Fridays and Saturday nights, perfect time for date nights, right, folks? 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., they have live music, and Sundays from 4 to 7 p.m. So what a nice way to wrap up the weekend by having some live music performances. And then also coming up this fall, there was something that was in their upcoming events calendar that I noticed. They have an uncorked winemaker dinner series. And this is something I definitely believe this is an experience event. You've been consuming the same kinds of microbrews with your cohort and such. It's time to upscale a little bit, folks. And in the month of, actually one a month in the fall season, October 15th, November 12th, December 17th, one evening a month on Friday, they will have a winemaker dinner series with some well-known vintners.
Vintners.
That's right, and that I definitely think that will sell out just from the need for experiences we have. Seating is going to be limited for this. It's not going to be outside because it gets kind of cold in the fall season, but reservations are required. Check out the Semiahmoo website. You know what to do. Type it in your browser of choice, and then you'll see in the upcoming shows some uncorked winemaker dinner series. Now, once we're going south from Blaine, if you will, just a little bit, but then right a hop, skip, and a jump from Semiahmoo is this wonderful little beach town.
It is totally a beach bumming town. It's called Birch Bay. So Birch Bay, it's one of the few places around here that you'll actually have sandy beaches. Like
Yes.
you can actually walk out here in Washington. It's kind of a running joke. We have beaches, sure. I mean, there's the Pacific Ocean is literally to the left of us. Okay. However, our beaches are rocky, and I don't mean like hard rock. I mean rocky as in hard on your feet.
Yes.
Rocky. So Birch Bay, what's nice about it is that you have sand, and you have a lot of it, especially on low tide. You can walk probably a good, quarter mile out before you will go to where the actual strait or the Salish Sea is. So if you wanted to go and do beach combing or just have your kid run around in salt water, Birch Bay is where it's at, especially if you want to do any of that type of thing. Sandcastles, done. You're not going to do sandcastles in Bellingham.
And to have a picnic at the Birch Bay State Park, which is just a hop, skip, and a jump away from the water and the beach and the sand, got you covered. But there's another fun activity available in Birch Bay, a little bit headed towards the interstate away from town. And that's the Birch Bay water slides.
Yes.
And, a perennial favorite. They actually have some water slides, and good ones too. But I noticed that opening day was June 30th. So they're open for business right now, not coming soon, right now. This is their 38th year of operations at the Birch Bay water slides. So good on them for sustaining this summertime tradition for the kiddos. Speaking of visiting there, if you go to as you're thinking about an opportunity, you got a day off of work, you get a chance on the weekend to plan for something like this. Just keep in mind, $23 for a day pass. It'll be less for the toddlers, and for senior sliders.
Sliders.
Yes, that's a thing. It's a little bit of a discounted rate, but also check this out, Grandma and Grandpa. If you are a senior viewer, meaning you aren't partaking in the water slide action, but you're there to let your kiddos go nuts, $5.
That's rad.
And so you don't have to pay full price for something like that. They got a great opportunity for you to, grandparents, you give your children a break by taking the grandkiddos out there for a day trip. Grandkiddos are going to love you. It's going to be one of those memories that they remember for quite some time before the doldrums of having to go back to school. Something to keep in mind.
No, that's really cool. And Birch Bay, I believe, Birch Bay water slides have been shut down up until this point.
Oh yeah, well, obviously with COVID and things like that, they had to go according to CDC and State of Washington mandates. On their website, they've got a big old blammo, click here for COVID-19 information, and they're happy to be open.
So, Chris, I think we need to segue into probably my favorite time of the podcast, and that is quality assurance. These picks are picked for you by AJ Barcet or Chris Powell, and/or for your quality assurance.
That's right.
Now, Chris, we've also kind of rebranded this thing as our secret weapon. So, with that said, these picks are actually our secret weapon that dovetail into our Whatcom Wandering and Bellingham episodes that we've been doing. And so, Chris and I, over the 5 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th year. So we typically get a lot of people reaching out who are either new to the area, moving to the area, stopping off in the area. Hello, Watch Medicine. And basically we kind of liaise with a lot of people of hey, if you're going to be stopping off in Bellingham for, a weekend, or if you're in BLI, or if you're moving to the area and you're just new, here's the thing, we usually get hit up. And so one of the resources I want to throw out, and to some, this might be a no-duh, but whenever you go to any place, Reddit, which is just a community, if you're back from my era, you might remember Dig. This is a community news resource site. You don't have to have an account to read anything. And for Bellingham and Whatcom County, there are 2 Reddits that you can go. Basically, it's /r/Bellingham or /r/Whatcom. And what's nice about this, as opposed to a periodical of an area or whatever, you get a vibe from the people. Now, with that said, It's also the local peanut gallery. So take what you read sometimes with a grain of salt. You will see, somebody peeved about some dog running in the area, or what was that loud noise, or whatever the case may be. But if you want to get a flavor of what the locals are talking about, whether that's the rent increases or whatnot, it can give you kind of an insider look without having to reach out to me and Chris. But by all means, reach out to us. We do love you.
Absolutely. And reddit.com is a website, and there's just a fire hose of information. Those subreddits that AJ mentioned are two little sections, kind of like hashtags or points of conversation. My quality assurance secret weapon takes the Reddit information, and here comes privacy security boy with his tinfoil hat on. I don't like the tracking that has occurred with reddit.com when you go to their website. There is a website out there called LibReddit, L-I-B as in
library.
That works. LIBREDD.IT, through a link in the show notes for you to click on. It's all of the Reddit goodness without the tracking. And I also threw in a web link that if you wanted to, dear listener of the Bellingham podcast, to view a combination feed of Bellingham and Whatcom subreddits, all you got to do is add a plus, and you can have multiple. It's like a multi-Reddit, where you can have multiple feeds in one link, where you don't have to have multiple stuff. So anyway, check out LibReddit and decrease the tracking in your life. And as I'm kind of looking at the watch right now, my beautiful Shinola Runwell 47 millimeter on a sesame seed bun, I'm noticing that we're approaching this half-hour mark that we attempt to have attain, so that we can provide a nice quality half-hour for that radio station we'll mention in our close. We should probably do a two-parter, because there's a couple more towns in Whatcom County that we need to talk about.
Oh yes, there is.
AJ, let's stick a fork in this show for now, and we'll come back next week with part two.
Ooh, a double header. And that wraps up this two-part edition of the Bellingham podcast. Thank you again so much for listening to us, rating us, reviewing us on wherever you like to get your podcast. Remember, if you are in the Bellingham area, like Chris said, you might listen to us on that radio station, KMRE 102.3 FM.
They are, if we haven't said it so many times in the past, they are community powered, meaning people run this darn radio station, and they're streaming all over the darn internet at kmre.org. Thank you very much.
Yep, and on that note, we'll talk to you next week. I'm AJ Barsegh.
And I'm Chris Powell. Thanks very much for joining us on the Bellingham Podcast. I really want to give you props on that additional information you provided about Semiahmoo, including the original pronunciation and the background for it. So many people just look at headlines nowadays, but we go into the context, because we're a contextual podcast.
Housekeeping.
And we're back.
Okay.